Welcome to the Connection Podcast. I am Lauren Dry, also known as the Connection Catalyst. Connection and this podcast for me is personal. As a driven professional, I found myself an expert in all things work and business, but it was at home that I really needed clarity and ease. After finally finding it one marriage breakdown and one marriage reset later, and finally discovering what really works to have connection in modern relationships, using science, simplicity, and soul, our signature program, Rise into Regulation, was born. That's giving so many others in modern, driven relationships back clarity and ease for good. On the podcast today, we're going to dive deep together on all things relationships, business, identity, and leadership. And clarity and ease is at the heart of it all. And we are so happy to be with you so that you can have what you need in connection, mind, body, and soul too. Hi, and welcome back. Today, I am joined by Dr. Paris to cover something that is incredibly exciting for me, but also has a lot of myths around it. We're getting into polarity, the energetic dance between two people that creates real attraction and, as the name says, polarity. Dr. Brian Paris works with men through what he calls the emotional engineering, blending neuroscience, somatic psychology, and shamanic wisdom with his own lived experience of divorce, single fatherhood, and rebuilding a life he'd built around control. He knows what it costs to lead from the head, and he speaks about it from the inside. I am so excited to talk today with Dr. Brian Paris about polarity, the truth, the lies, and the wisdom underneath. Welcome to the podcast, Brian.
Thank you, Lauren. Excited to get going.
Me too. I have heard all sorts of interesting, fascinating, true, and outright untrue facts about polarity. So I feel like this is a really important topic to allow the audience to understand the importance of what polarity is and isn't and how they can apply it to their own lives. I'm wondering, why do you think that this is the episode that the Connection podcast audience should be listening to today?
Because I think this is an understudied, misunderstood concept when we talk about polarity. Polarity is what drives us to, it's what drives our desire. And divorce is so commonplace. And we don't even know the stats of, especially men, of what happens after divorce. Do they quickly get remarried, or do they focus on women, wine, and work to ignore who they really were in that previous relationship? So polarity, I believe, is the secret through line to creating conscious relationships that not only have friendship, but they have desire. So there's a balance of both of those.
I love that. And I think that that's so important. Before we dive right in, I would love to hear a little bit more about your own story and take us back. Tell me, what did your life actually look like when things started going south?
So even before they went south, and again, I'm looking backwards 15, 20, 25, 30 years. So I've done a lot of time traveling on my own to realize who I was. I lived somebody else's story. So my story is, maybe it's collective, maybe it was parental or generational, whatever words you want to use. But my understanding was meet somebody, get married, create a business, have kids, live happily ever after. And then the white picket fence crumbled. I had the cars, I had a beautiful wife, I have amazing children. And I woke up roughly at about 35. I'm almost 52 now. And at 35, I woke up and I realized I don't know who I am. I don't know who she is. I don't know who I am in this relationship. I can remember laying back to back, like hiding our text messages from each other for years. And our sexual relationship was almost obligatory. It wasn't connected. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't a spiritual process. We were building a life, but it was just completely like two ships passing in the night.
It's fascinating that you say that, and also not surprising at all. It's
Yeah.
one of the most common stories that I'm coming across, particularly with men, women, and couples at this stage of their life, realizing that the front of house, the image of what they were sold would give them satisfaction and happiness, isn't doing that at all.
And it's so common. So many of us live this story that we're told to live before we figure out who we are. And I agree with you that I see it all the time. It's like everyone goes through that same pattern. Like, whoa, I wake up and I'm like, this is not what I imagined the like real deep relationship to be.
So, around this work for polarity and your expertise and curiosity around neuroscience, I'm wondering, What is your level of expertise around that? And how did you find yourself falling down this rabbit hole?
I kept double clicking to go deeper. But I started my life as an ADHD child. This goes way back. And fast
Right.
forward, movement became my medicine. It was like athletics and just any type of movement. And then I realized, okay, I think kinesiologically, I'm a feeler. That's not
Yeah.
common for men. Also, I was always too much energy, too loud, be quiet, those things. I took that as shame, meaning something's wrong with me because I'm too loud in an audience or I'm too much energy. But I channeled that into an understanding of the human body. So I studied kinesiology and then became a doctor of chiropractic and really understood how movement, spine, posture, all related to pain. I treated thousands of patients, had a brick and mortar office, and realized that I ignored myself and I ignored the human inside of the tissue. And there's something that we can't really touch, right? It's psychology, it's metaphysics, it's physiology, and it's all one system. And I realized that just working on bodies alone and following pain, you're missing out a huge component
Mm.
of where the emotions lay in the body, where language plays a role in the body. And my curiosity was mostly initially about myself. Who was I in relationship and why didn't this work or why did it fail?
Yeah.
Now I don't look at it as failure. I look at it as experience and lived and learned.
I'm curious. Talk to me more about that moment where you felt like things were starting to fail, where this curiosity started to be born from, that there was more to life, more to relationships, and more to being human than just the body.
So when I was getting divorced, or at least considering divorce, just realizing like this relationship was not moving in the right direction. We weren't in it. And it wasn't, you could tell we were just running through the motions and we had our own social lives, our own trips, our own this and that. And then I jumped right into another relationship. And I may have mentioned before, many men that I work with find that it's easier to distract themselves with women, wine, and work
Right.
instead of really facing what caused that relationship to not endure. And polarity becomes an important piece. Truth becomes an important piece. There's a question that I ask all of my clients that came recently to me through a colleague was, what's more important to you, truth or peace?
Hmm.
And it becomes really important because most of us men, we become people pleasers in relationships because we fear losing love. So we hold back on our truth. We get quiet or we go out and distract ourselves from really finding out what is true on the inside.
Yeah.
And the way to truth in my lived experience and my clinical experience and my coaching experience is through the body because the
Yeah.
body speaks before the brain listens. So being able to create literacy around what's happening inside here and using it as a guide versus something to avoid or
Yeah.
numb out to.
Tell me, what was that point in time post divorce when you realized the three W's, women, wine, and work, weren't the answer to everything? And although you had gone down this track of realizing there was more that was needed on your own spiritual and mental health journey, that somatics might be a missing piece to the puzzle.
So after my divorce, like that stretched into my business closing after COVID affected us and closed the business. And I just realized I wasn't in the right place. The signs and symptoms. I'm an intelligent man. I know I've always used my brain and I've run into roadblocks. And I found that every roadblock I hit, I just went numb. Instead of using my brain to say, okay, you're an intelligent dude, you've got business experience, you've got life experience, you've got support. I just became this lone wolf and went inside and froze. And when we look at neuroscience, neuroscience shows us that the most rudimentary protective mechanism of the nervous system is to freeze. You can see it in animals as well. Animals pretend that they're dead. They put all their blood in their organs, their muscles go limp. So I've always been someone who likes to move, who likes to exercise, who likes to socially engage and hang out, have fun and adventure. And I just lost all of that. I love taking this from Tony Robbins that insanity is defined by expecting different results and doing the same thing over and over. And I kept doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what do I need to do? So I started searching. And that's when I leaned into ancient wisdom and then also continuing to carry neuroscience through and things that I understood about the nervous system. And somatics were this, I would say somatic psychology has really started gaining momentum in the 90s and the last 30 years, but 30 years for me went like that. But I knew so much about the physical aspects of the body, but how it stood statically. But really, what brings life to the body is our language and our emotions. And then it settles in different postures. So this becomes our way of being. I had to actually look at who am I being? What's my common language? How am I processing emotions? Or am I even processing them? And then what posture do I carry? What signal am I giving off to other humans? Do they feel relaxed and safe around me? Do they feel trust? That was the hugest piece in romantic relationships. I was never somebody a woman could trust because I couldn't handle my own emotional regulation. So I kept trying to outsource that.
Yeah, I hear you with that. The body and polarity and the inner world started to become really real for you during this time where you were doing your own research and discovering somatics and how that really interlinks not only with neuroscience, but with our relationships. I'd love to hear a little bit more for someone who is either not familiar with the term polarity or maybe having a misconception about the word. How would you define polarity?
Great question. So, defining polarity for me is looking at what creates desire and connection or romantic desire. And the other end of polarity is resonance, meaning like we get along. So, if we look at a battery, you have a negative and a positive charge, and they create a current in between. It's the same concept. It's hard to say, like, it's maybe metaphysics, quantum physics, who really knows what it is? But bottom line, how is this applicable? It's most applicable to me through analogies. I look at alpha or masculine energy as the river bed and feminine or omega energy as the river flowing through.
Right.
So they
Yes.
feed off each other. They are one, right? So if there's no containment, the water goes flat. If the feminine energy breaks through containment can't hold, then right? But if you have a balance of both, you have unity and energy and polarity. So in romance, let's use masculine and feminine just to make it easier for listeners. First of all, both of our genders, male, female, regardless of sexual preference, we all have these energies that run within us, masculine and
Mhm.
feminine energy. Your masculine energy is like get shit done, focus, logical, single point focus.
Mhm.
Your feminine energy is more expression and love and energy. And we have all of these. So to deny them, or to say, oh, I'm not feminine, that's inaccurate. So we have to be able to balance, first of all, realize how do I operate in the world? Am I more masculine to like to hold more space? Am I good at observing? Can I be a trusted, calm source for energy to move through? And
Yeah.
my feminine energy is when I'm expressing. So let's talk about this in real world. Let's say we're in a relationship and you're with your partner and you're both complaining about your days.
Okay.
And that's complaining is a form of expression. So if you have two feminine energies throwing at each other, there's no polarity. It's just like a battery, right? When you put a positive and a positive together, the charge doesn't exist.
Okay.
So in a masculine, let's say you're both planning a trip and each of you is focused on, okay, I got the map, I got the directions, I'm going to schedule the Airbnb, I'm going to go food shopping, I'm going to do all these things, right? So that's like that
Yeah.
logic and that organization. That's the
Okay.
masculine. But when you match masculine, masculine, feminine, feminine, that doesn't really equate to what you want to create in the bedroom, which is desire. So recognizing and learning through people who do this work and studying, I think it's an applied skill. There is a skill set and an understanding that has to be attained to put this into relationship.
Okay. So I think the audience has a bit of a picture now as to what polarity is and the definitions around it. I would love to kill some myths. What do people normally assume that polarity is that is completely wrong?
People assume different myths in polarity. And I'll speak from my lived experience because I am a man. I'm predominantly masculine and I do have feminine energy that I've connected to and I've built and developed
Mhm.
in expression. I think that the misconception is that masculine energy, if you're looking at the manosphere or that kind of stuff, it's just like
Hmm.
dominance, power, control, and I can be louder, I can be more obnoxious,
Right.
I can make this much money and I have these material objects and I have this chest measurement size. And that happens with women as well. But I think that the misconception is that the true masculine essence and presence is depth and space. I like to equate it to gravity with the men that I work with. Can you be a source of gravity, like depth and weight, and handle
Right.
whatever comes at you? Can you handle your spouse or your partner breaking down without you breaking down or shutting down? Can I hold that space and just receive? I think the biggest misconcept is that, or not misconcept, but men are trained to fix and solve. Whereas true masculine essence and power is about support. And I'm always asking myself, my clients, how can you support versus solve?
Mm,
We're trained
right.
to go in and fix, right? There's a video that's been out there with a woman who had a nail in her forehead and she's talking to her man and he's like, "What, but you have this nail." And she's like, "I don't care about the nail in my forehead. I just want you to listen." And and it's really funny because he eventually says, he sits back and says, "All right, I understand how difficult it could be to have a nail in your forehead," and just
Yes.
support and hold that space. So every human being, man or woman, basic psychological wellness and well-being is to be seen and felt and understood. And I
I
think
love
we
that.
we can only do that for another to the depth in which we do it for ourselves. Can I turn inwards and feel what's going on? Can I see the truth of who I am and what my behaviors are for myself and others? And do I
Yeah.
really understand what's going on inside? It is deeper work. And I think it's the path to freedom and peace and calm.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that about that video. It's one that I shared with friends maybe a decade or more ago, and it regularly pops up on my Facebook memories with all of the comments underneath it about, "Oh my gosh, the nail. This is
Yeah.
exactly right." So I'm so glad you brought that
Yeah,
up.
it was brilliant.
Okay. So when you describe this balance of polarity as presence and honesty, but not necessarily performance, tell me what the difference between those would be in practice,
I think the most important thing, even before explaining what it looks like in practice, is to understand that it's a dance.
right?
My teachers talk about playing with fire because fire can burn you. It can also warm and create light. So, desire inside is fire. So, from a practical standpoint, the masculine energy observes and can see. So, a simple sentence that I've learned from my teachers is, I see that you're driven to create this podcast to share information with the world. I see how meticulous your efforts are to create an awesome experience for your listeners. Now, how does that feel to receive that? Start with a sentence, I feel.
I feel seen. I feel collaborative. I feel curious. I think that that's probably the feeling that matches statements like that. Definitely.
Awesome. So that's a practice right there.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I see and I feel and one observational practice is watch yourself using those statements.
So would you say I see is a masculine statement and I feel is a
Yes.
feminine statement?
Yeah,
Right.
or from alpha and omega as well, yes,
Yep.
but you're holding those poles, right? So when we talk about polarity, there are poles, and then there's a
Yeah.
charge that happens in between, so that's what creates this connection or this fire
Right.
inside, and it doesn't always have to be romantic.
Hmm.
We're not in a romance, we're colleagues, right? But I'm still holding that space and recognizing what I'm seeing. And it
Right.
creates an element of trust and safety and regulation in the nervous system. When
Yeah.
you said that, like, I felt my body just relax. And that's been a long time
Right.
because I've had to pay attention to that. But I was like, oh, I'm onto something here
Yeah.
because like I felt my body relax. So I'm always watching inside as well as observing outside.
Yeah. Would you say that there's a percentage of masculine versus feminine that a man or a woman should be embracing?
Great question. Like establishing norms for this. And
Yeah.
I don't think there are norms
Okay.
because I have focused on meeting a man where he's at. And I've met so many different types of men. You've got super quote unquote masculine, right? Guys like firefighter in the forest, right? He's doing all man things, but that person also likes to write poetry and create art on his downtime. So I
Right.
don't think there's like a norm. There's an understanding of how to feed those energies and how much you are. The important part is realizing if you're in a romantic relationship, when each of you are in those states. Because some women that I've met, they tend to ride on a more masculine energetic, right? But if they meet a more masculine man, that just creates resonance or dissonance, doesn't create
Yeah.
polarity, right? So you have to understand within the relationship, and that's where the work comes.
Yeah.
Before that, you have to understand oneself. How do these energies
Yeah.
move within me?
For many of the women who listen to the Connection podcast, they may actually be resonating more with the challenges around being in your masculine too often. So, what they would be understanding or interpreting the masculine as would be assertiveness, an ability to problem solve, a lot of initiation. And so, their curiosity will probably be around how can I soften into my femininity and get a better balance back without feeling as though I'm losing control?
So circling back, like how does a woman who is always in her masculine, maybe it's work a lot of times, right? Because I have to, maybe it's a CEO who has to get things done and hold space for others. And how do they get into that feminine if they are naturally a female and want to feel that energy? And it's all about expression and getting into those feelings. And if you have a partner that works with you, it's even better. So I had a client the other day, he's working on rekindling the fire within his relationship, and he hadn't gotten his wife flowers in a long time. So instead of just
Mm,
getting her flowers, he encouraged her to smell them and touch them so that she could get in her feelings and her body. In essence, that's the beauty of the divine feminine, is like expression of her own energy and her own love and her own body, but that comes through the senses, whether it's
right.
an internal representation or external senses, smell, touch, feel, sight. But he encouraged her to get into her feelings versus just like cutting the stems, putting in a thing and looking at them. He added other senses and he's like, hey, did you smell those? What do they smell like? And I encouraged him to ask her, how did it feel to receive that? And I have a young son who's 20. Every time I ask him how to feel, he said, Dad, don't ask me that again. So my daughter, she'll answer me, but it's training for him.
What are the signals for someone who's curious about polarity that the balance is off?
I think within oneself, it's hard to put like an exact black and white 1 + 1 = 2 mechanism on this. And I would think there's an underlying uncomfortability in your own skin. Let's say tactically, like maybe you're gotten divorced and you're having trouble finding those relationships or you're repeating the same things over and over. I think that's like the best sign. It's like these relationships, they last for a month, they get really hot and then they just drop off. So like when those patterns keep reoccurring over and over, I think it's time for you to take a step back and look at how am I relating?
Yeah. What are the right questions that someone should be asking themselves or their partner to determine whether polarity is the road that they should be traveling down to begin investigating getting that spark back?
Looking at your relationship honestly, are you happy each party? Are you happy with your sexual connection? If you both agree that making love and sex is part of your relationship, how does that fit into your life? Are you able to maintain what happens in the bedroom as well as maintain what happens in the boardroom in your separate lives? And I'll call the boardroom running the family, having children, and also keeping the relationship central. What does that look like? And I think many of us want to have that, but we get to these points where polarity dissipates. We become roommates and best friends and partners, but we lose that spark, that spark can be regained first with observing and admitting and communicating that it isn't there anymore. I think that's the first step, is like naming what's happening. I know myself, I just got quiet. I didn't know how to express it then. I didn't know how to use my omega or feminine energy and express what I was feeling inside.
How does a man begin to identify that there isn't enough feminine energy within him and within how he expresses himself in a relationship without feeling as though exploring the feminine or the omega, as you mention it, is in some way emasculating?
That's a big one. Emasculation. And I think that comes from a mismatch of polarity between a man and a woman.
Right.
And recognizing the feminine energy inside is like, how often can you express what you feel? And here's a practical example. We can express what we feel when we give ourselves space from our emotions. And here's what I mean. I can use the term I'm angry. I'm very close to anger when I say I'm angry, and I'm very limited in my definition of who I am, versus saying I feel angry,
Mm.
right? I was addicted to anger for a long time. I learned it growing up. Many men are.
Mm.
And anger is typically telling you, it's a basic physiological emotion that everyone on every continent on the planet experiences. And it means that some kind of boundary was crossed. So I get angry. Right? And you can apply that to any area of life. I'm feeling angry because XYZ. And then the next step, even before that, is like, okay, I'm feeling anger in my body. And it definitely happens before it starts to get into thought patterns and the loops. Because then you bring in history and my other experiences and all that stuff. But it's really, boom, if I can learn, okay, for myself, I feel like I want to make a fist, or I feel just like rage in my extremities. And that's a fight or flight mechanism in my body. Literally, my body's telling me to run, but I'm like, okay, is this situation really that dangerous? Do I need to run? Do I need to fight? Do I need to flight? No, I don't. So I can say, okay, I'm being angry because this boundary was crossed and I don't like it. And can I express that to someone with loving kindness? That's the work. And I'm not a master. I'm in
Yeah.
in practice for the next 50 years.
So for men exploring polarity, the wisdom is in exploring the feminine as a way to express yourself more clearly and help to have a stronger connection.
Beautifully said. Yes. And the way
Right.
to explore the masculine is how to get quieter, stiller, more observant, deeper. And we got to do both. The omega or feminine experiences that I've had, one of the best things that I've done in the recent years is ecstatic dance. Have you ever done an ecstatic dance?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No.
So when I learned about dancing, I learned it as like a mating ritual. Like, how could I
Right.
dance good enough to look good and meet a woman on the floor? It was like a girl back then, 12, 10,
Yeah.
11, 12, 13. But now with ecstatic dance, it's about just expressing through movement.
Right.
And there's no end game. It's just like sexual performance, right? Are we focused on performing and finishing, or are we
Mm,
focused on being present with pleasure for self and
interesting.
other? So
Yeah.
that's like dancing, or for me, it could be writing, like writing poetry. I like to write, where I can
Yeah.
just express what I'm feeling inside through written word. I like to draw and doodle and those things.
What would you say to a man who is interested and curious about what you're saying, but perhaps thinks, well, that's not for me. It's not safe for me, or that's not my personality to begin exploring my feminine. That sounds nice for you, but I'm not going to write poetry and I'm not going to go do an ecstatic dance. What would you say to him?
So the man who is challenged by creativity. So it's creation, right? Maybe that man likes to do woodwork and build cabinets. Like, that's an expression of a thought and an idea. It's not just a grunt activity. Yes, there's masculine things involved with it, but maybe it's just walking in nature and feeling the beauty of a sunset, or feeling the wind, or walking through the forest and like slowly listening to the birds and tapping into your senses that way. I do believe there is a human experience, regardless of gender and stereotypes and collective ideas that we've been inundated with.
For someone who's not used to experiencing that or even showing curiosity to that, what would you say the benefits are?
Someone resistant to experiencing all the beauties of life is missing out on a lot of the beauties of life. And just slowing down and quieting to listen to what's inside has been the greatest gift. First, to be present with myself.
Mm.
When being present with another person requires you to pay attention to your senses, your environment, and being able to listen and key in without thinking in your own mind. So again, it's like quieting down and having that level of awareness. So I feel like people who aren't exploring this are missing out on a significant beauty of life. When we look at the end of our lives, right? And let's say we get a tombstone, what's on it? Is it like what my 2026 Q4 P&L was? Or was it like the names of the women that I dated or the companies that I bought and sold? No, it says father, brother, son, friend, partner. I mean, it's all about relationships. So I live my life with a yes and, meaning, yeah, relationships are so important to me and I want to run a good business. It's not like one has to replace the other.
Mm.
So it's just masculine doesn't replace feminine and feminine doesn't replace masculine. There's a dance together.
Right. And what would you say maybe to the woman who's listening and who does feel actually stuck in what she believes to be masculine energy and she is looking to be more in her feminine, but there is a fear that even exploring that means losing control?
It totally does. I get that where losing control is often the edge and start slow. Just exploring things that help you feel in your body and help you just feel, whether
Yeah.
it's watching a movie and crying or reading a romance novel or a 50 Shades of Grey type novel, and then explore what happens through the body. Do you like taking a bath? Do you like taking walks? Do you want to put rose petals in your bath? What's the environment like? Do you like to light candles? Do you like to play the music in the background? All of these are ways to connect to the body and expression. I think the deepest expression of the feminine is just feeling and sensing. What's your
Yeah.
relationship to pleasure? And that's,
Yeah.
I'm sure you approach that a lot of your relationship uh, containments. But I think that's the most overlooked part in sexual relationships
Mm.
is like an overshadowing of performance versus pleasure. How do you experience pleasure? What's your connection to pleasure? I think that's
Yeah.
and it's a very important thing to work with your partner as well in that, as the woman too.
For the woman who is wanting to drop more into her feminine and maybe release some of that control, what kind of conversations can she begin to have with her partner so that she can begin to explore true presence and creativity for herself? So, embracing that femininity while inviting him to step into his masculine so that that balance can start to come back.
So how does a woman go about creating a conversation to create more intimacy in their relationship?
Yeah.
That's a question I ask everyone and ask myself too. I think it starts with that question we mentioned earlier about peace versus truth. If I just keep my peace and walk on eggshells because I'm afraid to speak what's happening, as a woman, if you're not happy with the sexual chemistry or you're not happy with the way that the relationship is going, there has to be a point of truth and expressed with some grace and kindness and love because men are cavemen. We're not used to these deep conversations. Most men I meet are like, okay, 40s and 50s, they can have these conversations, but I wish I had them in my 20s and 30s,
Right.
about what it takes to create not just the things you're doing, but like the love that drives an entire family and relationship is based on that center relationship.
Mm,
So I think intimacy is not just sexual, physical intimacy. It's being able to tell one's truth and receive another's truth. So I think that like that has to be a key element of the relationship all the time. It's like, okay, can we be in a small space? Kids are over here. We're both not at work. We need to talk.
absolutely. And for someone who is investigating polarity and how they can begin to apply it to their own lives, what would you say are the most obvious examples of healthy masculinity versus negative masculinity? And the same for the feminine as well.
Healthy masculinity looks like, if it's in a man or in a woman, is one that can hold space and listen without responding first or reacting. It's like seeking to understand, leading with curiosity, slowing down, being heavier, more dense, and more present. That's what a healthy masculine looks like. Can I hold the space, protect, and provide all of those together? And an unhealthy masculine is someone who wants control, someone I would say like a man who can't control his sexual urges. Those are boys. As grown men, this is a path we can attain where we learn how to control these desires and let that fire warm us and keep that in between our relationship. And for a woman, I would find that unhealthy expression would be like the habit of always complaining versus looking at the truth behind there. Because complaint is there's always something deeper, right? And it's an expression, but perhaps digging deeper into it versus the habit of complaining and looking at what needs are unmet. I think that goes for both, like what needs become unmet in both poles.
And what would you say is a really good picture of a relationship that has a balance of polarity in it?
A good balanced polarity in relationship looks like for this if this is what this couple decides, like they have an active sex life or like that, or I love PDA. I think like public display of affection is something that I find I love seeing that out in the world. I love seeing a couple that is like you can feel the love in between them. And whether it's holding hands or kissing in public, I'm a big snuggler and fan of PDA. So I like that just to express whatever's in that moment. And I think it's prioritizing the polarity in the relationship, like actually doing the work, like practicing the exercises. You can do it
Yeah.
through text, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm consistently texting my partner, like, I see how hard you're working and I know you're tired and I want to create some space for you to rest later tonight.
I love
This
that.
has taken a long time for me to get here. So
Yeah.
it's an arrival, but it's also that arrival is like, okay, now the practice has begun.
And for couples where maybe the resentment is high and one or both people just keep waiting for the other person to begin, what would you say to them?
That's a double pronged question because when resentment is high, you're unwilling to forgive. And that is such a thorn in moving forward. If you're holding on to the past, like how do you move to something different? I
Mhm.
would almost say I think one of the most important pieces there is like go do your separate work. Before deciding to separate or divorce or anything like that, it's like go do work on yourselves a little bit so you can get clear and truthful and authentic with you. And whether you need a mediator, someone like yourself or me, or like someone who actually does mediation, there's so much that can be done to create clarity for a decision whether to move forward or stay in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, and I think there's so much wisdom in setting yourself free from needing permission from someone else to evolve and to change and to get the joy and love in your life that you actually need. And so often
Absolutely.
we find ourselves at the mercy of the patterns in a relationship that we're just used to. And I love that reframe that's so important of that even if there is resentment, even if there are patterns that feel chronic, and even if there are reasonable reasons to feel like the trust isn't there and that it's not safe to be vulnerable and to start exploring these new tools, that we don't have to wait for permission from someone else to begin changing our life. And that is a huge shift. That's empowering, whether it's polarity, whether it's hidden pattern work, whether it's neuroscience, all of these channels, they open up to you when you realize that you don't have to be at the mercy of the past.
Love that. And what stuck out to me most of what you just said, like we don't have to ask for permission to start healing ourselves. And that's where it all begins. From my own life experience, I'm in a relationship now with my former wife, and I purposely do not use the word ex-wife because I just don't like how it feels anymore. She's engaged. Her fiance is like a brother of mine, and I love him and I love her. And we have she's a mother of my children. And I stay at their house when I go visit my kids. So it's like that, but that's taking a lot of work on me.
Yeah.
And we always get funny conversations because I'm sitting there with my arm around both of them when people are like, you guys are so close. And it's taking a lot of work and
Mm.
maturity and realizing like there's something more important here. I'm saying this because we talked about resentment. If I still held on to things in the past
Mm.
without healing and or processing all those things, I would still be triggered, but I'm no longer triggered.
I love that. And that's freedom, isn't it?
So that's the word, freedom.
Yeah. Well, I would love to ask you a few last questions before we find out a little bit more about the deeper work around this. And I like to ask you 5 spitfire questions to really help the audience narrow down on some of the most important lessons or takeaways that you want them to learn from this work around polarity. So, to get started on our 5 questions, I would love to ask you in one sentence, Brian, polarity in 5 words.
Polarity in 5 words is understanding desire within yourself and another, and how to wield that for better relationships.
Beautiful. I love that.
It may have been more than 5 words.
Might have been more than 5 words, but we'll let you get away with
Thank you.
it. One thing every man should stop doing tonight.
Porn.
Interesting. Okay.
So many men
Yeah.
are using that as an escape tool, and it's horrible for relationships.
Yeah. Give us a summary picture of what they're missing out on when they use porn as a substitute.
I feel like when men are using porn as an escape, they're missing out on the connection to pleasure themselves. Like,
Hmm.
I don't mean pleasure themselves, but experiencing and feeling pleasure within oneself.
Right.
And how can again, it's like, how can you connect deeper to your own pleasure so that you can experience a woman's pleasure through her?
Hmm. I love that.
Yeah, and it only occurs with how deep you're allowing yourself to feel pleasure. And there's
Yeah.
this is a we could go on and on. I know this is more than 5 words, but there's such a performance culture around that. And I think porn is just I've had my own battles with it too. And every man that I talk to is most men, so I think it's something to eliminate.
Yeah. Absolutely. One thing every man should start doing tonight.
Meditating.
Interesting. And for the man who hears the word meditate and twitches, what would you say?
Yeah, because there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Call me because I've got tactics to shut down the monkey mind. But there's, what you got to find your way to stillness. I
Love
wouldn't
them.
say just meditation. I would say stillness, quiet, and solitude.
Yeah. Important. Learning how to be with self before you can be with someone else.
One of the earliest things that I did in this work was I would have a lollipop and not allow myself to bite it. I'd have to suck on the lollipop till it was done and practice patience, and I'm still practicing that all day long.
Hmm.
So it's
Interesting.
it's like all these little things that you can do, like in a podcast here, when I've been
Mm.
focusing, I've had a habit, let's say my nose itches or something like that, I'm like, "Okay, it's just an itch, I can ignore it." So I'm
Interesting.
looking to keep stiller and calmer and quieter so I can observe and not have noise all here. So the signal is
Mm.
right here in our connection and relationship.
Interesting. I love that. Not being at the mercy of your nervous system.
Beautifully said. Yes.
Mm. What do you believe is the best sign a relationship has real aliveness in it?
A relationship that shows aliveness, sometimes it doesn't show out front. It's like you gotta dig under a little bit, but I think that they have just as much of intimacy, sexual intimacy, as they do friendship. I think because it feeds all of those buckets. And what does repair look like? And I know the Gottman Institute and things like that have studied, like, that's what defines how a couple endures, because everybody ruptures. How do you repair?
Mm. Absolutely. And there's power in that. The word repair can create a lot of fear in others. And
Mm,
the word repair can often be so interlinked with danger, vulnerability, and fear, when self repair can be the first doorway that you can begin to walk through before exploring repair with others. If
absolutely.
someone remembers only one thing from this episode, what should it be?
Intimacy requires effort and energy and the right attitude, like a desire to want to achieve it. And I'm
Mm.
going to say intimacy with oneself, intimacy with the other.
Mm.
And we can use the word, because of your podcast, is the connection, right?
Yeah.
But like connection to self, like that requires a different level of work.
Mm.
It doesn't come naturally. I know you're not in America. I'm in America, but like, at least my experience of school was like math, science, geography, history. I didn't learn about emotional regulation and observing my feelings and noticing them. Like, I would love it if I would have learned that at a younger age so I can learn how to respond versus react. learn how to self-regulate versus self-soothe.
Hmm.
I think all of these elements become, if that's the one thing that you got to have the attitude, which is like desire to want to do this, to
Oh,
want to better
absolutely.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's consistent work. It's not a, oh, I'm done. I don't think it's ever over because that's the human and spiritual experience.
Yeah. There's an interesting article from some years ago by Forbes that said the most important trait in high level staff hires in any business is actually EQ, not
Mm,
IQ. And that comes from having mastery of emotional regulation. So it's not just something that benefits your relationship. And the most effective form of education for anyone is modeling. So if you are wanting to pass that down to your kids so they can be successful, the best thing that you can do is practice yourself.
yes. And it's, do you have children?
I do.
You
Yes.
do? Okay, so
Yes.
you may have seen this as well, but I've watched my kids repeat, thankfully, some of the things I learned in my later years, like they starting to, like I overhear them saying these in conversations with their friends about emotional regulation and things like that. And just to echo about modeling. They're watching
Yeah.
what you're doing all the time, even if they're not. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they know. They certainly
Yeah,
know.
they sure do.
Mhm.
And they'll parrot it back to you at the best of times. But I
Mhm.
think it's also a really freeing recognition that sometimes even when you're doing the work and it feels like it's not lasting, it's a long game.
Yes.
And when you're ready to sign up for the long game and the healthy discomfort, that's an investment in the future and it's worth it.
Definitely. There's an intangible ROI on this work. And
Mm.
I mean, you could put it into words like peace or calm, or like, I just feel more relaxed in my body on a daily basis. But I get triggered. I lose my stuff and I got to get back to it and communicate, be with myself.
And self-repair. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast, Dr. Brian. I would love to learn a little bit about where the audience can find you to continue the conversation, what resources they can start to dive into to get to know you a little bit more.
So on my website, under the programs, it's drbrianparis.com. I have a program that I built called Man Rebuild. And this is a video course, a free resource on how to really, depending on what stage you're in, like if you need clarity to make a decision as to which direction to go, diving into the relationship or not, or if you're in the middle of it and need stability, or if you're already past divorce and you want some new direction. There's a great, like, quick little, I would say, spiritual slap to the face to really put you in a clear position. So just find me on Instagram at Dr. Brian Paris. Drop me a direct message. Just send a man rebuild, and I can give you the access code to that. I'm active on YouTube as well at Dr. Brian Paris, and LinkedIn is also at Dr. Brian Paris.
Wonderful. We'll make sure to put all of that in the show notes so that the audience can come find you afterwards as well. But
Awesome.
thank you so much for being here. I feel like this episode is really going to change some people's lives and help others to understand a little bit more about what polarity is and why it's so important and the benefit it can add to their lives. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today with us, Dr. Brian. And as always, if this brings up anything for you and something that really resonates most for you from this podcast that you want to dive into a bit deeper, that feels really relevant in your own life, please feel free to come and join the conversation. Let me know what you found most exciting about this episode over on Instagram at Lauren_dry. And I cannot wait to be with you there and to continue the conversation. So please make sure you like, subscribe, and follow for more episodes, and share this with someone who you feel is going to resonate with this and take away some beautiful lessons around relationships and polarity. Thank you again, Dr. Brian Paris, and we'll be with you all again soon. Big love.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate you.